Let's talk about this precept of the one master. And we're going to be talking about it because recently we had this conversation over on PWR where Dr. Patrick Slattery and Adam Green from No More News, both doing magnificent work, have of what I know of the stuff that they produce, of course, and that is what's important about the one master. You'll see in one moment here. Also goes to the questions about Thomas Jefferson I had the other day, other questions that I am routinely getting about Vladimir Putin, and they routinely come in. Of course, and weeks earlier, we had the conversations about Tommy and all of his followers that are very upset, some of them trying to be loyal, and I understand that desire to be loyal. It's a noble tendency. But this is what you have to understand. Right now, there's a lot. They were going back and forth. Adam and Patrick were going back and forth on whether or not Putin of Russia is leaning more this way, leaning more that way. Is he controlled? Does he care about our people? Is he the great white hope? Or is he controlled by some certain other group of people being manipulated? And if so, to what degree? More so, less so? These sorts of questions. We have others, as I mentioned, Tommy. We have this discussion about historical figures, contemporary figures, content producers, thought influencers. This is always coming up. Gamers, people like Mr. Pie. We had a big conversation about that here on Going Free one time, and this is, I don't know if it'll be what we'll end up calling it, but it is the one master principle, coming from the phrase that you can't have two masters. For those serving white well-being, there is one master in this world. One thing that matters, one thing that you always bend your knee to, and nothing else. And that is the spirit of the West. One thing in the world that you bend your knee to. There's one thing that I bend my knee to, and that is the spirit of the West. And there is nothing the spirit of the West wants more than what is good for Western kind is good, and what is bad for Western kind is bad. Now, we can disagree on how we get to that outcome, but if that is our outcome, then there is no way we can go wrong. If that is the objective that we are all arguing for, there is no way we can screw this up, because it's not going to be one here, one there, one group here, one group there. It's going to be the fluidity and dynamism of Western kind. In this town, in this county, in that city, in that high rise, in that basement of that restaurant, in all of these places, if they were all bending only to the one master, the spirit of the West, they cannot go wrong. Where you go wrong is when you decide that a man or a woman or a movement or an idea is more important than the spirit of the West. That is where you go wrong. Nothing is more important than the spirit of the West. One master. How does this play out in your life? Plays out this way. Conversation about Putin goes like this. Is Putin for Western kind, or is he against Western kind? And if he's against Western kind, is it because he's serving himself, or is it because he's working for some other group of people behind the scenes? The answer is, who gives a shit? That is the answer. What matters is, does Putin do something good for Western kind on Monday? Does he do something good for Western kind on Tuesday? Does he do something good for Western kind on Wednesday? If he does, then you can like him. If he doesn't, then you hate him. That's how it works. Same thing holds true for me. Same thing holds true for Mark Collette. There is no reputation that gets you by. There is no person who winks and nods and dog whistles about maybe I'm supporting you, maybe I'm not. No, it is all or nothing. No more reading the tea leaves of politicians. Only imbeciles do that. Do you understand that? Only imbeciles continue to peer down with their saliva falling out of their mouth into the pool of tea leaves, floating on their saliva, wondering whether or not this politician or that politician just dog whistled a little bit here or dog whistled a little bit there. Maybe they kind of care for us. And now you can sit back on your lazy ass and do nothing because you think Trump will do this and satisfy everything, or Putin will do that. From now on, if anybody you know says Putin is going to do this for us, or Trump will do that for us, or Pi really likes us this way, or maybe this other person over there, you immediately ask them, why are you such a lazy bastard? Why are you putting the onus and burden and work on them? The only reason you would do that is so that you can have nothing to do. So get off your lazy ass. You can say this person did something good for Western kind, but what's now important is you are going to go out into the world and you are going to make it happen. You are going to be the change that you want to see. You are going to be the proselytizer. You are going to be the apostle that wakes up the next 1,000, the next 10,000, the next 100,000 of our people. You are going to be the person who finds out the method by which we can channel this information into the minds of 1 million of our people. The only thing that matters is the service to that one master. Ideologies, political parties, individuals, ideas, that's all that matters. And if you decide that that is how you're going to view the world and view all people, one master for them all, you can never screw this up again. I am so sick and tired of hearing thought influencers talk about these people and on with their followers all debating worthless nonsense. Feel free to like Putin when he does something good for Western kind. Don't spend 16 hours cogitating on whether or not he likes us or dislikes us. And if he dislikes us, is it because he's motivated by himself or he's motivated by some group behind the scenes? Because all that matters is where the rubber meets the road. All that matters is what he's doing. Is it good for us or not? When it comes to historical figures, the anti-whites, listen closely. When it comes to historical figures, the anti-whites like to conflate you with people they've already demonized. Do you like person X? Well, if that person did anything that served white well-being in accord with your morality, you like those actions, you like those statements. Beyond that, you have no knowledge of anything else. Beyond that, you don't care. That is how you don't get conflated. People ask you to give your stamp of approval on the totality of someone's life. Forget about it. You never answer to anti-white hypotheticals, ever. When they ask you, well, what would happen in this hypothetical scenario, non-whites, are they victims then? Or white people, are they superior then? You don't answer that. You say you do not answer to anti-white hypotheticals. End of conversation. This anti-white cross eyes on the right said, well, Jason likes this person or Jason likes that person. And I've always clearly said, and it will appeal to all of all white brothers and sisters out there of normal sensibilities, that I approve of and endorse everything that a person says or does that serves white well-being in accord with my morality. No sane white person would ever reject that. Those are the only minds that you're worried about out there. You're not worried about the anti-whites. You're not worried about the anybody else out there. Just say anybody else out there. I could name a list. I'm not going to bother. Anybody else out there. There's one master. Right now we have all of this, and this is how it works. Do you laud or do you condemn? When it comes to Tommy, do you laud or do you condemn? Do you forgive and give excuses because he has done something good in the past, even though now he's harming Western kind? Hell no. This is the only mechanism by which we can control those figures that potentially people behind the scenes are controlling. Here's how it works, ladies and gentlemen. I've just given you the skeleton key. And if we all use it, we win. How does that work? How does that sound to you? This is how it works. Shadowy figure comes up from behind the scenes. Not very shadowy because their names and faces are out there. They just won't be written about in the regime's media very often. They show up behind some personality. They co-opt them, or they pluck somebody out of some degenerate lifestyle that is easily compromised and already has things that have compromised them. And they put them out in front of us. And they say, look, here's a bunch of money, especially if these folks are not used to money. And then you know it because they immediately go out and they buy those gaudy things that they've thought that'll make me the special person, the expensive sneakers or something, Christ's sake. Then they put them out in front of you. They calculatingly have them do a couple things so they build a reputation up as somebody who cares about you all. And then the poison. They serve the interests of those behind the scenes. And why does it work for them? It works for them because we don't hate that SOB the moment he turns his back on us, the moment he cuts our throat. So Tommy wants to do, for example, using Tommy, you can fit any name in there you want. Serve white well-being or do something that obliquely serves white well-being without saying it. It's all going to be implied. Serving white well-being. I'm speaking specifically to those who like or have liked or followed or worship Tommy, or those who have come to their senses. And then turns around and cuts your throat. The way you prevent this from happening in the future is you laud the behavior, the actions that serve white well-being, and you condemn the behaviors and actions and statements that serve white ill-being. And you soundly condemn them. If Tommy knew that hundreds or thousands of you would show up outside his house with placards that said, go straight to hell for taking our money and doing this with it, you're no leader of ours. You are a carpetbagger. You are a chameleon. You are counterfeit. If he knew that hundreds or thousands would show up, if he knew that when he would go to the grocery store, whatever it's called in the UK, and he could get confronted by a working class, and I grew up in working class folks in the UK. I've worked blue collar jobs, folks in the UK. I've swung the hammer. If he knew that he was going to end up at the grocer and he was going to run into some barrel-chested guy who works at the lathe or beats the ducting together, or some guy twisting wrenches on rigs, and that guy was going to get in his face after taking your money and then putting it for some other cause, and that guy was going to leer down at him and say, okay, little man, what are you going to do now? If Tommy knew that, the moment that the person behind the scenes with the dollars fanned them out for Tommy and said, this is what you're going to do to cut their throat, Tommy would say, whoa, wait a second. You know, one of those barrel-chested guys is going to maybe beat the piss out of me for doing this. You know, I'm going to end up in front of I'm going to look out my window and there's going to be 500 people with placards telling me to go to hell for this. I don't know that it's worth the money you're trying to pay me. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the skeleton key. One master. It's not Tommy. It's not Mark. It's not me. It's not Jared George. It's the spirit of the West. All that matters is what we do in service to white well-being. We go against the service to white well-being. We serve white ill-being. You hate us for it. You hate Tommy for it. You hate Putin for it. That's all that matters. That is how we control from this side of the game board. And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you right now, if you want to know why it's so much harder for folks behind the scenes to manipulate things behind the scenes in radically Islamic countries, it's because when you diverge from the objectives set out in that ideology as a leader, unpleasant things happen to you. And we don't need radically unpleasant things to happen, because it's intimidation enough to know that several hundred people will show up to shout you down, to make your life pretty miserable. You don't need to have really horrible things happen to you to know that every time you go to the grocery store, you got to watch out for the guy who works the jackhammer all day long in the city, because he's pissed. If these folks who are serving ostensibly white well-being know that if they run afoul and begin to serve white ill-being, that they are going to have those results, it's going to be a lot harder to lead us down these dead-end alleys, which is where we started this conversation in Going Free today. I hope you appreciate this. When we talked about John's Christmas card and how Conservatism Inc., railroads and blind leads our people into these dead-end alleys. So they have nothing to do but throw their hands in the air, cover their eyes, and close their minds to anything else that could save us. This is the skeleton's key. One master. Never forget it. It's not human. It's the spirit of the West, resides in all of us. And if we are not serving at the moment we're not, you condemn the person. Let's see that from now on. Let's stop having these conversations, these protracted. It's one thing to say, there's my opinion, there's your opinion. It's a 10-minute thing about something that is beyond us that we have no control over. It's quite another thing to excuse your indolence, your lack of activity, because somebody in power is going to make it happen. Same thing with this Q phenomenon. It's an excuse for indolence. Sit on your ass. Someone else will do it for you. So if anybody has any questions or comments about that, I hope we have resolved it. I know we will have to revisit it in the future nonetheless, because it's one of those perennial things. People want to be lazy. They don't want to have to muster courage. And both of those things impel them to put faith into individuals, faith into parties, faith into movements, faith into ideas that otherwise are undeserving. And it also causes them to give forgiveness where forgiveness isn't warranted or due. You want to complain about the power of the money brokers behind the scene. It doesn't matter how much money they have. I can promise you this. I'm not going to follow this train of thought to its logical conclusion for you. You can do this on your own. If you start on this train of thought, you will see this skeleton key. You will see that it doesn't matter how much money the money printers, they're those who print the money, those who are paying from behind the scenes. Doesn't matter how much money they have. Doesn't matter how much they can buy their puppets. It doesn't matter how much they can give them, how many cars, how many prostitutes, how many, they're probably all, I can't even say, because here on YouTube, very sick individuals. Doesn't matter how much they can give them. Because if you follow this train of thought, you'll see that you can control those people who claim to be representing you quite easily. Do the thinking for yourself.